You know that feeling when your whole world flips upside down in a second? Yeah, that happened to me. It was just another Tuesday or so, I thought, until my phone buzzed with a message that was clearly not meant for me. Last night was incredible. Can't wait for the next time. It read with a winking emoji that made my stomach churn. It was from my wife's number, but definitely not for me. That's how I discovered her affair. Just like that, a text message blew up my life. I remember staring at the screen, my heart pounding in my ears, feeling like I was in some sort of sick movie. But this was no fiction. This was my life turning into a nightmare. I confronted her as soon as she walked through the door. The look on her face confirmed it before she even spoke. The argument that followed was a blur of anger, betrayal, and disbelief. I demanded a divorce right then and there. She tried to explain, to apologize, but the words sounded hollow. Trust once broken is like shattered glass, impossible to piece back together. The next few days were a whirlwind. I couldn't keep this storm inside, so I did what I never imagined I'd do. I told her family. Sitting in their living room, watching their faces morph from confusion to shock, was surreal. My in-laws, who had become like a second family to me, were equally betrayed. Disappointment hung heavy in the air. My relationship wasn't the only thing that had been destroyed. Her relationship with her family was in tatters too. In the midst of this chaos, her sister Sarah reached out. We ended up at a bar, downing beers and talking about everything and nothing. There was this tension, a mix of sadness and something else I couldn't quite put my finger on. Sarah had always been the wild one, unpredictable but supportive. That night, she offered me her empty apartment upstairs. You shouldn't be alone right now, she said, her eyes full of something that looked like concern, but with a tinge of something else. Moving into Sarah's place felt like stepping into an alternate reality. I was relieved to be out of the house that now felt like a prison of memories, but anger simmered beneath the surface. I was starting a new chapter, but not one I had ever wanted to write. Word spread like wildfire, friends, colleagues, even casual acquaintances all knew about the affair and the impending divorce. Rumors don't need wings to fly, they just need a whisper. Our reputations, both hers and mine, were being dragged through the mud. It was like watching a train wreck in slow motion. You want to look away, but you can't. So there I was in Sarah's apartment, surrounded by her eclectic collection of art and books, feeling a bizarre mix of anger, relief, and a strange sense of anticipation. The foundations of my life had crumbled, but amidst the ruins I found myself at a crossroads. Little did I know the path I was about to take would lead me to places darker and more twisted than I could have ever imagined. Please, can't we just talk about this? Her voice cracked over the phone, the desperation clear even through the digital connection. My soon-to-be ex-wife was on the line, pleading for a chance to explain, to make things right. But what was left to say? The trust was gone, shattered into a million irreparable pieces. I responded with a coldness I never knew I had. There's nothing left to discuss, I said and hung up. The next day fate threw a curveball at me. I ran into him, the guy she cheated with at the local coffee shop. The air instantly thickened with tension. Words were exchanged, voices raised. I saw red when he had the audacity to suggest it was just a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding. My fist connected with his face before I could process what I was doing. The altercation was broken up quickly, but not before a crowd had gathered, their phones out, capturing every humiliating second. Back at Sarah's apartment, where I'd been crashing, I found a semblance of peace. She listened as I vented, her presence a strange comfort in the storm of my life. We'd spent hours talking, her sharing stories of her own failed relationships, me dissecting where mine went wrong. It was odd how tragedy could bring people together, how shared pain could be a bonding agent. One evening, as we were laughing over a particularly bad date story from Sarah's past, the doorbell rang. It was my wife, unannounced and unexpected. The air in the room shifted from light-hearted to tense in a heartbeat. Sarah excused herself, leaving us to talk, but the conversation was anything but productive. Accusations flew, tears flowed, and in the end, she left as lost as she had come. The days following her visit were filled with more discoveries, more lies coming to light. As I packed up our shared belongings, I kept finding things. Receipts, hidden messages, tokens from other men. It was like peeling back layers of deceit, each one more painful than the last. I realized I hadn't known her at all. She was a stranger wearing my wife's face. Meanwhile, her world seemed to be crumbling too. Friends were taking sides, and most weren't on hers. She called me one night, sobbing, saying how alone she felt. But what could I offer her? Comfort? Forgiveness? I had none left. Her betrayal had not only ended our marriage, but it isolated her in a social wilderness. In the midst of all this, Sarah became my anchor. She was there, always ready to listen, to distract, to offer a semblance of normalcy in the chaos. Our relationship, once just familial, was evolving into something deeper, something complicated. I was drawn to her not just for comfort, but for something more, something I wasn't sure I was ready to explore. This chapter of my life was like walking through a minefield, every step fraught with potential explosions of emotion and revelation. I was navigating a path littered with the debris of a broken marriage, betrayal, and new unexpected feelings. The way forward was unclear, each day bringing you challenges, new pain, and surprisingly new connections. Life has a way of throwing you curveballs when you least expect it. Just when I thought things couldn't get any more complicated, Sarah, my sister-in-law, dropped a bombshell. We were sitting in her living room, the same room where we'd shared countless stories and confessions over the last few weeks. That's when she looked me in the eyes and said it. I've had feelings for you for a long time. I was stunned, speechless. This wasn't just a shoulder to cry on anymore. This was something else, something deeper and far more complicated. Meanwhile, the divorce proceedings were moving forward. Signing those papers felt like signing away a part of my life. It was a strange mix of relief and profound sadness. The ink on the divorce papers wasn't even dry when things with Sarah escalated. Maybe it was the raw emotions, the need for a connection, or just the thrill of the forbidden. But we started an affair. It was passionate, intense, and felt like a much-needed escape. But deep down I knew we were playing with fire. During all this, my wife's life seemed to spiral further out of control. She lost her job, a casualty of the scandal, and her plummeting performance. Part of me felt vindicated, seeing her face consequences. But another part, a part one wasn't proud of, felt a pang of guilt. Her world was falling apart. And in a twisted way, I was part of the reason. One day, while grappling with these conflicting emotions, I ran into an old friend, Mike. We'd lost touch over the years, but he'd heard about the drama. Over coffee, he looked me straight in the eye and said, "Be careful, man. You're walking a dangerous path. Don't make the same mistakes." His words hit me harder than I expected. Was I repeating history? Was this affair with Sarah just another disaster waiting to happen? As if on cue, things took an even darker turn. I started receiving anonymous, threatening messages. "Stop what you're doing or you'll regret it." The first message arrived as a text, making my blood run cold. Who was watching? What did they know? The messages kept coming, each one more ominous than the last. I felt like I was being watched, like the walls had eyes. Paranoia crept in, turning every shadow into a potential threat. This chapter of my life was becoming a whirlwind of emotional chaos. There I was, caught in the eye of a storm I helped create. My failing marriage was on its last legs. My affair with Sarah was heating up. And now a mysterious stranger was threatening me. Every decision, every action felt like it was leading me further down a path of destruction. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was dancing on the edge of a cliff. One wrong step away from a fall I wouldn't recover from. You know you're in deep water when the ripples of your actions start hitting everyone around you. The first shockwave hit when my wife's parents disowned her. I heard about it through the grapevine. They just couldn't stomach the scandal. It was a harsh move, leaving her utterly alone. But then again, weren't we all drowning in our own ways? Meanwhile, my affair with Sarah was spiraling out of control. What started as secret meetings in the shadows was now a full-blown, reckless relationship. We were seen together in public more often, throwing caution to the wind. It felt like a twisted act of defiance, a way to claim some control over the chaos of my life. But deep down I knew we were only fanning the flames of an already raging fire. Then came the confrontation I never saw coming. My wife, fueled by a mix of anger and desperation, showed up at Sarah's doorstep. Words were exchanged, harsh and biting. Before I knew it, things escalated into a physical altercation. I had to pull them apart, my heart racing, my mind screaming. This wasn't just a private mess anymore, it was a full-blown spectacle. But the universe wasn't done throwing curveballs at me. One morning I found a package at my doorstep. Inside were photos, pictures of Sarah and me together, intimate and damning. My heart sank. Someone was watching, documenting our affair. The sense of paranoia and fear that had been simmering under the surface boiled over. Who was behind this? What did they want? The crescendo of this chaotic symphony came at a family gathering. It was supposed to be a normal get-together, but the undercurrents of tension were impossible to ignore. And then, like a bolt out of the blue, the affair was accidentally revealed. I still don't know who let it slip, but in an instant the room erupted into chaos. Accusations flew, tears were shed, and the once cohesive family unit shattered right before my eyes. In the aftermath, even my friends began to distance themselves. I could see it in their eyes, hear it in their voices, the disapproval, the judgment. I was becoming an outcast not just in my family but in my social circle too. The support system I once thought unshakable was crumbling under the weight of my choices. This chapter of my life felt like walking through a minefield blindfolded. Every step seemed to lead to another explosion, another bridge burning. The repercussions of my actions were far-reaching, impacting not just me, but everyone around me. It was a sobering realization, one that came with a heavy dose of regret in the understanding that some threads, once unraveled, can never be woven back together. If you ever doubted how messy life can get, let me set the record straight. It's like a tangled ball of yarn, and every attempt to untangle it only makes it worse. It started with my car, or what was left of it. One morning I found it outside, keyed and dented. A silent scream of my wife's despair. It was more than just vandalism. It was a physical manifestation of our shattered lives. But the drama didn't stop there. A call from my wife, her voice trembling, dropped the next bombshell. She was pregnant. The news hit me like a ton of bricks. Pregnant now? My mind raced with doubts and questions. Was I the father? Or was this another chapter in her book of lies? It was a cruel twist, adding another layer of complexity to an already convoluted situation. Amidst this turmoil, Sarah, my sister-in-law and now secret lover, faced her own demons. Her ex showed up out of the blue, throwing accusations and demanding explanations. It was a scene straight out of a soap opera, and I was an unwilling actor. The confrontation was intense, a stark reminder of the complicated web we were weaving. Just when I thought things couldn't get any more complicated, the mysterious stranger who had been sending me threatening messages decided to reveal himself. He was the first lover of my wife, a ghost from her past, now materialized to haunt our present. His revelation was like pouring salt on an open wound, a bitter reminder of how little I truly knew about the woman I married. Amidst this chaos, a moment of clarity came in the most unexpected way. My wife, now destitute and alone, reached out for help. Despite everything, I found myself facing a moral dilemma. Could I turn my back on someone I once loved, who is now carrying a child that might be mine? It was a question that gnawed at me, a stark reminder that life's choices are rarely black and white. As if to add to my inner conflict, my relationship with Sarah started to fray at the edges. The public scrutiny, the whispers and stares, the judgment in the eyes of friends and strangers alike. It was taking its toll. Our affair, once a secret escape, now felt like a weight, dragging us down into an abyss of guilt and uncertainty. This chapter of my life felt like navigating through a storm with no compass. Each event, each revelation was a wave crashing over me, leaving me struggling to catch my breath. The wreckage of my marriage, the uncertain future of my unborn child, the complexities of my relationship with Sarah, and the haunting presence of a vengeful past lover. It was a tangled web of emotions and consequences, a chaotic dance of actions and reactions. And with each passing day, the dance became more frantic, the web more entangled. Hey everyone! I hope you're enjoying the video so far. If you do, please take a moment to hit that like button. It really helps me out and lets me know you appreciate the content. Also, if you haven't already, consider subscribing to the channel. Subscribing is a great way to stay updated with all the latest videos and to be part of our growing community. It's quick, it's free, and it ensures you won't miss out on any upcoming content. So go ahead, smash that like button and hit subscribe. Your support means a lot and keeps this channel going. Thanks for watching. Just when I thought my life couldn't spiral any further out of control, it did. It started with an early morning knock on the door, the kind that sets your heart racing. Cops. They were there to arrest me for a crime I didn't commit. a setup by the mysterious stranger who had been haunting my life. Handcuffed and led away, I felt like a character in a bad movie. Except this was my reality. The court hearing was like a circus with me as the unwilling star performer. I sat there dressed in a suit that suddenly felt too tight, listening to the prosecution painting me as a criminal. Evidence was presented, twisted to fit the narrative they wanted to sell. My lawyer did his best, but the doubt was palpable. The whispers in the courtroom felt like knives, each one cutting a little deeper. I was fighting for my innocence in a game that seemed rigged from the start. In the midst of this legal battle, I received news that jolted me. My wife was in the hospital, her pregnancy taking a dangerous turn. It was a harsh reminder of the human cost of our tangled lives. Regardless of the baby's paternity, the situation tugged at something inside me. It was a mess, but it was still a life connected to mine in ways I couldn't ignore. Then came the revelation that knocked the wind out of me. I discovered Sarah, the woman I turned to for solace, had her own closet full of skeletons, dark secrets that she had kept hidden, secrets that added layers of deceit to our already complicated relationship. I felt betrayed, angry and foolish for letting myself be drawn into another web of lies. Things escalated quickly. A confrontation with the mysterious stranger turned violent. It happened in a dimly lit parking lot, a fitting scene for the dramatic showdown. Fists flew, words were hurled like weapons, and for a moment I saw red. It was more than just a physical fight. It was an explosion of pent-up frustration and anger, a manifestation of the chaos that my life had become. The final blow came when I learned the bitter truth about Sarah. She wasn't just a comforting presence. She was a manipulator who had been pulling strings from the very beginning. The realization hit me like a ton of bricks. I was a pawn in her game, a game that had added to the destruction of my already fractured life. This chapter of my life was like walking through a minefield blindfolded, each step more treacherous than the last. I was accused of a crime I didn't commit, embroiled in a dramatic court battle, linked to a pregnancy shrouded in uncertainty, and entangled in relationships built on lies and deceit. The confrontation with the stranger and the revelation about Sarah were the final pieces of a puzzle that depicted a picture I no longer recognized. My life had become a house of cards, fragile and teetering, ready to collapse at the slightest touch. In the whirlwind of betrayal and revenge, I'd forgotten one brutal truth. Every action has a consequence. The first domino to fall was the most tragic. My wife lost the baby. The news hit me like a sledgehammer, not just for the loss itself, but for the realization of how far we'd all fallen. Her despair echoed in the empty chambers of my conscience, a haunting reminder of the human cost of our tangled saga. This tragedy was a wake-up call. As I sat alone, the magnitude of the destruction caused by our collective deceit and desire for revenge dawned on me. The hurt, the broken relationships, the shattered trust. It was like gazing upon a battlefield after the war, seeing nothing but ruin and regret. I understood then that some scars are too deep to heal, some bridges too burned to rebuild. But the universe wasn't done with me yet. The saga, with all its sordid details, became public fodder: the affair, the court case, the broken family ties. It was all laid bare for the world to see and judge. Condemnation came from every corner. Friends, family, strangers on the street. I was a pariah, the protagonist of a cautionary tale about the perils of infidelity and revenge. The repercussions spilled over into my professional life too. Colleagues who once greeted me with friendly nods now averted their eyes. Business deals fell through, clients pulled out, and my career, which I had built over years of hard work, crumbled. It was a steep price to pay for personal failings, a lesson in how closely linked our personal and professional lives can be. Meanwhile, my wife, now my ex, faced a future bleaker than I'd ever imagined for her. Alone, grieving, and with her world in ruins. She was a shadow of the woman I had once loved. It was a stark reminder of the far-reaching impact of our actions, a ripple effect that extended far beyond the immediate scandal. Sarah, too, found herself in troubled waters. Her past, a murky pool of secrets and lies, finally caught up with her. Legal troubles began to surface, each allegation another nail in the coffin of her already tarnished reputation. The sister-in-law I thought I knew was unmasked as a stranger with a hidden agenda. The final jolt came in the form of anonymous tips about Sarah's betrayal, details of her manipulations, her plans, her deceptions. all laid out in black and white. The truth hit me with the force of a tidal wave, washing away any remnants of trust or affection I had for her. I was left to grapple with the reality that I had been a pawn in her game, a mere player in her twisted plot. This chapter of my life was a stark lesson in the consequences of our choices. It was a descent into a world where every turn brought a new revelation, each more painful than the last. The loss, the public shame, the professional downfall, the revelations about Sarah. It was a relentless storm and I was right in its eye. My world, once full of promise and love, had collapsed into a heap of despair and regret, a testament to the destructive power of revenge and deceit. If life's a journey, mine had taken a detour through hell. The first sign of the end game was the final explosive argument with Sarah. It was the culmination of weeks of tension, suspicion, and betrayal. Accusations flew like arrows in a medieval battle, each word laced with venom. The love that had once seemed our salvation was now just a bitter memory. As she stormed out, slamming the door behind her, I knew this was the end of the road for us. The fallout from my broken marriage and the disaster with Sarah left me financially crippled. I was forced to sell almost everything I owned to cover the legal fees and the costs of the divorce. Each item sold felt like another piece of my life being stripped away. My car, my watches, even the little cabin by the lake where we used to escape the world. All gone. It was a harsh lesson in the cost of mistakes, a tangible measure of the price of my actions. Meanwhile, my ex-wife was struggling to rebuild her life, but her reputation, tarnished by scandal, was a shackle she couldn't shake off. She tried to start over in a new city, but the whispers of her past followed her like a shadow. It was a reminder of how our actions can ripple far beyond the immediate fallout, affecting not just our lives but the lives of those we touch. In the wake of everything, I found myself in a place of profound isolation. Friends who once filled my days were now just echoes of a life that felt like a distant dream. I spent hours reflecting on everything that had happened, each memory a shard of glass in the wreckage of my past. The realization of the pain I had caused, the lives I had upended, it was a heavy burden, a weight that pressed down on me with the force of 1,000 regrets. The news of Sarah's arrest was a jolt back to reality. Her involvement in criminal activities hidden beneath the facade of her seemingly carefree life was the final twist in a saga that had long since ceased to surprise me. It was a stark reminder of how little we know about the people in our lives, how easily we can be deceived by those we trust. In search of some semblance of redemption, I turned to volunteering. Helping others became my lifeline, a way to make amends for the chaos I had caused. I found solace in the simple acts of kindness, in the gratitude of those I helped. It was a balm for my battered soul, a faint glimmer of hope in the darkness that had enveloped my life. As I close this chapter, the lessons are clear and brutal. The destructive power of revenge and betrayal is a force that can tear lives apart, leaving nothing but ruins in its wake. I share my story not for sympathy, but as a warning. If there's one thing I've learned, it's that the path of vengeance leads to a wasteland of sorrow. My journey through this nightmare has taught me the hard way that the price of revenge is far too high. A cost measured not in dollars, but in lost love, broken families, and shattered lives. My hope now is that my tale can be a cautionary one, a beacon for others to steer clear of the treacherous waters of hatred and retribution.